Welcome to kindness in real life. Imagine a homeless girl dancing for a pink dress. Then a billionaire CEO hires her on the spot. But when his ex storms in, sparks fly, and a fake romance turns real. Will chaos win her heart? If you like this story, give us 39 likes to keep us going and subscribe to Kindness in Real Life for more captivating tales. The evening chill gnawed at Lily Collins' bare arms as she stood on the uneven sidewalk, her ragged coat dangling loosely over her shoulders. The wind tugged at the frayed hem, but she barely noticed. Her hazel eyes were locked on the boutique window across the street, where a single mannequin stood bathed in soft light. It wore a dress, a vision in blush pink, its delicate satin bodice shimmering faintly, the skirt spilling out in layers of airy tulle that danced even in stillness. To Lily, it wasn't just fabric. It was a dream stitched into reality, a whisper of a life she'd never known. Her sneakers, patched with duct tape, squeaked faintly against the pavement as she shifted her weight. She'd been coming here for weeks, ever since she'd wandered past this corner of the city during a restless night. The Smith Fashion Group boutique was a beacon in her gray world of cardboard beds and scavenged meals. She didn't know designers or trends. Her wardrobe was whatever fit from the shelter's donation bin. But this pink dress spoke to her. It was the color of cotton candy, of sunsets she'd watched from rooftops, of something soft and warm she couldn't name. Lily tilted her head, her tangled brown hair falling into her face. She didn't have a mirror, but she could imagine herself in that dress, twirling, laughing free. A small, secret smile crept onto her lips, and before she could stop herself, she took a step closer to the glass. Her reflection stared back, a smudge of dirt on her cheek, her coat swallowing her thin frame. But in her mind, she wasn't this girl. She was someone else, someone who belonged. Without thinking, she started to move. She swayed at first, then lifted her arms, spinning in a clumsy circle. Her sneakers slapped the pavement, and she let out a soft giggle, picturing the pink tulle flaring around her. She leaped, a little hop, really, imagining the skirt catching the air, her hair bouncing like in those shampoo commercials she'd seen on thrift store TVs. For a moment, she wasn't cold or hungry or invisible. She was a girl in a pink dress, dancing under lights she'd never seen. The sound of footsteps snapped her out of it. Lily froze mid-twirl, her arms still outstretched, her heart slamming against her ribs. She hadn't heard the glass doors of the boutique swing open, hadn't noticed the figure stepping onto the street until it was too late. She dropped her arms, stumbling back into the shadows of the alley, her face burning. Nicholas Smith stood there, his sharp silhouette framed by the boutique's golden glow. He'd been inside, checking inventory reports with the manager, his routine inspection of the flagship store. At 32, he was the youngest CEO in Smith Fashion Group's history, a man who'd built an empire on precision and control. His black coat hugged his broad shoulders, his dark hair swept back impeccably, and his blue eyes, cold as winter sky, fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to disappear. Lily ducked her head, tugging her coat tighter as if it could shield her from his gaze. She knew who he was. Everyone did. The billionaire who turned fashion into a battlefield, who could make or break a designer with a single word. She'd heard the whispers, brilliant, ruthless, untouchable. And now he was looking at her, a ragged nobody spinning like a fool in front of his store. "What are you doing?" His voice cut through the quiet, smooth but edged with curiosity. He took a step closer, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement. Lily's mouth went dry. She opened it, then closed it, her hands shoving in her pockets to hide their shaking. "Nothing," she mumbled, barely audible. "Just standing here." He raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "You were dancing." It wasn't a question. Heat flooded her cheeks. She risked a glance up, expecting irritation or disdain, but his expression was different. His lips twitched, not quite a smile, and his eyes softened, just for a second. "You've been here before," he said, nodding toward the window. "I've seen you, always staring at that dress." Her stomach dropped. He noticed her. It's pretty," she stammered, her voice small. "The pink one." I like it. Nicholas turned his head, studying the display. The pink dress glowed under the spotlight, its tulle catching the light in a way that made it look alive. Good choice, he said after a moment. It's one of mine. Yours. Lily blinked, confused. I designed it. He slipped his hands into his coat pockets, his tone casual, but carrying a weight she couldn't ignore. Years ago, first piece I ever sketched that made it to production. She stared at him, her mind scrambling to catch up. A billionaire CEO who sketched dresses? It sounded like a fairy tale, but then again, so did everything about him. Before she could find words, he spoke again. What's your name? Lily, she said, hesitating. Lily Collins. Lily. He tested it, his voice low and deliberate. Then, without warning, he asked, You ever worked retail? She laughed, a sharp, startled sound that bounced off the alley walls. Me? No, I don't even have a real address. You don't need one. He stepped closer, his gaze steady. I need someone at the counter. You start tomorrow. 8 a.m., don't be late. I don't tolerate it. Her jaw dropped. Wait, what? You heard me. He turned to head back inside, then paused, glancing over his shoulder. And clean up a little. You'll be wearing my brand. Lily stood there, dumbfounded, as he disappeared through the glass doors. The street fell silent again, the hum of the city fading into the background. She looked at the pink dress in the window, its soft glow unchanged, and felt a spark flare in her chest. Something wild and fragile, like the first flicker of a fire she didn't know how to control. Her mind raced. A job? In there? She didn't know the first thing about selling clothes or anything, really, except surviving. She couldn't even remember the last time she'd held a real paycheck. But the way he'd said it, like it was already decided, left no room for doubt. She hugged herself against the cold, her breath puffing white in the air. Tomorrow, she'd walk into that store. Tomorrow, she'd stand behind a counter instead of outside a window. Tomorrow, she'd be closer to that pink dress than she'd ever dared to dream. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that stepping into Nicholas Smith's world wouldn't just change her life. It'd turn his upside down, too. Lily took one last look at the dress, its pink tulle shimmering like a promise. Then she turned and shuffled down the alley, her sneakers slapping the pavement. She didn't have a plan, didn't have a clue how she'd pull this off. But for the first time in years, she had something to wake up for. Inside the boutique, Nicholas stood by the counter, watching her shadow disappear through the glass. His assistant, a wiry man named Ethan, approached with a tablet in hand. Sir, the inventory's done. Anything else before we lock up? Nicholas didn't answer right away. His eyes lingered on the empty street, then drifted to the pink dress in the window. Yeah, he said finally, his voice quiet. Give me a spare uniform. Small size. She starts tomorrow. Ethan frowned. She? Who's she? Nicholas smirked just barely. You'll see. And with that, he turned away, already wondering what chaos this girl, this Lily Collins, was about to bring into his perfectly ordered empire. Lily woke to the sound of a dumpster lid slamming shut, the metallic clang jolting her upright on the thin cardboard she called a bed. Her breath puffed in the dim alley, the early morning air sharp against her skin. For a moment, she forgot where she was, or why she'd even bothered to set her cracked phone alarm for 6 a.m. Then it hit her, the job, the boutique, Nicholas Smith. She scrambled to her feet, brushing dirt off her coat. Her stomach growled, a reminder she hadn't eaten since yesterday's half sandwich from a deli trash bin. But there was no time to scavenge now. She had to be at Smith Fashion Group by 8, and she'd promised herself she'd at least try to look presentable. She grabbed her plastic bag of belongings, mostly rags and a broken comb, and darted toward the public restroom she'd found a few blocks away. The mirror was chipped, the fluorescent light flickering, but it was enough. Lily splashed cold water on her face, scrubbing at the smudges with her sleeve. Her hair was a bird's nest of brown tangles, and she wrestled it into a messy bun with the comb's few remaining teeth. She didn't have makeup or clean clothes, but she smoothed her coat and squared her shoulders. You've got this, she muttered to her reflection, though the wide-eyed girl staring back didn't look convinced. By 7:50, she was outside the boutique, her sneakers squeaking on the polished sidewalk. The glass doors loomed ahead, reflecting the pink dress in the window. It was still there, still perfect, and for a second, Lily let herself imagine touching it. Then she shook her head. Focus. Don't screw this up. The doors slid open with a soft whoosh, and she stepped inside. The air smelled of lavender and money. Crisp, expensive, nothing like the alley she knew. Racks of dresses lined the walls, each one gleaming under soft lights, and a marble counter stretched across the back. Behind it stood a woman with a tight blonde ponytail and a name tag that read Claire. She looked up from her tablet, her eyes narrowing as they landed on Lily. "Can I help you?" Claire's voice was polite but icy, like she'd already decided Lily didn't belong. "I'm, supposed to start today," Lily said, shifting nervously. "Nicholas, Mr. Smith, told me to come at 8. Claire's perfectly arched brow shot up. "You the new hire?" She scanned Lily's coat and sneakers, her lips pursing. "Wait here." Before Lily could respond, Claire disappeared through a door marked staff only. Lily stood awkwardly, her hands shoved into her pockets. She glanced at the pink dress again, its tulle shimmering like a promise. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Maybe she could. "Collins!" A sharp voice cut through her thoughts. Claire was back, holding a folded uniform, a sleek black blouse and skirt, the Smith fashion logo embroidered in silver. "Change in the back. And hurry. Mr. Smith's already here." Lily's stomach flipped. "He's here. He's doing a walkthrough. Move it." Claire thrust the uniform at her and pointed to the staff door. Lily stumbled into the cramped break room, fumbling with the clothes. The blouse was soft, the skirt crisp, and they fit better than anything she'd worn in years. She caught her reflection in a small mirror and almost didn't recognize herself, still scruffy, but less like a street rat. She tugged at the hem, took a deep breath, and stepped back into the store. Nicholas was there, standing near the counter, his black coat swapped for a tailored suit that made him look even more untouchable. He was talking to Claire, his voice low, but he stopped when he saw Lily. His blue eyes flicked over her, taking in the uniform, the messy bun, the nervous way she clasped her hands. "You're on time," he said, his tone neutral but with a hint of approval. "Good." "Barely," Claire muttered under her breath, earning a sharp glance from Nicholas. He ignored her, stepping closer to Lily. "You know how to work a register?" No," Lily admitted, her cheeks flushing. "But I can learn. I'm quick." Nicholas nodded. "Claire'll show you. Start with restocking the front racks. I want everything perfect before we open." He turned to walk away, then paused. "And don't touch the display window unless I say so." Lily nodded furiously, her heart racing. She could do this. Restocking. Simple. Claire sighed, clearly unimpressed, and waved her toward a rack of silk blouses. "Fold these. Neatly. And don't dawdle." For the first 10 minutes, Lily managed. She mimicked Claire's precise folds, stacking the shirts with wobbly but passable results. She even started to relax, humming softly as she worked. Then disaster struck. She reached for a pile of scarves on a higher shelf, her sleeve catching the edge of a nearby display. A tower of dresses stacked like a wedding cake, each one a pastel masterpiece. She didn't see it wobble until it was too late. With a soft whoosh, the whole thing collapsed, a cascade of fabric tumbling to the floor in a pastel avalanche. Lily yelped, lunging to catch them, but that only made it worse. Her foot slipped, and she crashed into the rack, sending a dozen hangers clattering. By the time she hit the ground, she was buried under a pile of chiffon and silk, one scarf draped over her head like a veil. "What the hell?" Claire's voice was a shriek as she rushed over. "Are you trying to ruin everything?" "I didn't mean to." Lily scrambled up, shaking off the fabric. "It just fell." Nicholas appeared at the edge of the chaos, his arms crossed. His face was unreadable, but his eyes glinted with something. Amusement? Annoyance? Lily couldn't tell. "Explain," he said, his voice calm but firm. "It was an accident," Lily stammered, brushing hair from her face. "I was reaching for the scarves, and boom. Dress avalanche." Claire snorted. "She's a walking liability, sir." We can't. Enough. Nicholas cut her off, his gaze still on Lily. He stepped forward, picking up a lilac dress from the mess and smoothing it with a practiced hand. No damage. Tack it. Properly this time. Lily nodded, her hands trembling as she started gathering the dresses. Claire hovered, muttering about standards, but Nicholas didn't leave. He watched, silent, as Lily fumbled through the task, her fingers clumsy but determined. By the time the store opened at 9, the racks were back in order, mostly. Lily's stacks were uneven, but nothing fell again. She exhaled, wiping sweat from her brow, and turned to find Nicholas still there, leaning against the counter. Not bad, he said, his tone dry. For first try. She grinned, despite herself. Told you I'm quick. He didn't smile, but his lips twitched. We'll see. The morning blurred into a haze of customers. Women in designer coats, men with platinum cards, all expecting perfection. Claire thrust Lily behind the register after a 5-minute crash course, and she muddled through, ringing up sales with shaky hands. She mispronounced half the brand names, but no one complained. Yet, then came the VIP. A tall woman in a fur-trimmed jacket strode in, her heels clicking like gunfire. She carried a sleek box, clearly a return, and made a beeline for Lily. The woman snapped, dropping the box on the counter. This dress was defective. Fix it. Lily blinked. Oh, sure. She grabbed the box, assuming it was a delivery, and started toward the back. I'll put it with the stock. She's not staff. Claire hissed, intercepting her. That's Mrs. Hargrove, a client. Lily froze, the box slipping from her hands. It hit the floor with a thud, the lid popping open to reveal a crumpled gown. Mrs. Hargrove gasped, Claire groaned, and Lily felt her soul leave her body. I thought she was delivery, she stammered, but Nicholas was already there, stepping between them. My apologies, Mrs. Hargrove, he said smoothly, scooping up the box. We'll replace it immediately. On the house. The woman huffed, but nodded, mollified. As she stalked off, Nicholas turned to Lily, his expression a mix of exasperation and something softer. Delivery, he repeated, almost laughing. She had a box. Lily protested. I panicked. He shook his head, handing the box to Claire. Stick to the register, and try not to bankrupt me by lunch. Lily slumped against the counter as he walked away, her heart still pounding. She'd survived barely, but as she glanced at the pink dress in the window, untouched and perfect, she couldn't help wondering, how long could she last in Nicholas Smith's world before she broke it? Or it broke her. Lily's second week at Smith Fashion Group started with a warning from Claire. Don't touch anything you don't understand. It was sound advice, but for Lily, it was like telling a moth to avoid light. She'd survived her first few days, barely, dodging disasters with a mix of luck and Nicholas' surprising patience. The dress avalanche and VIP mix-up had earned her a reputation among the staff as the chaos girl, whispered behind her back with equal parts amusement and dread. But today was different. Today was the launch of the new spring collection, and the boutique buzzed with an energy that made her stomach twist. She stood behind the counter, her black uniform wrinkled from a morning of frantic folding, watching the store transform. Workers rolled in racks of pastel dresses, lilac, mint, buttery yellow, each one tagged with a price that could have fed her for a year. A small runway stretched down the center, flanked by velvet chairs for the press, buyers, and VIPs. The pink dress still gleamed in the window, untouched, a silent reminder of why she was here. Claire barked orders like a drill sergeant, her ponytail swinging as she adjusted spotlight. Lily, stay out of the way, she snapped, barely glancing at her. Mr. Smith's counting on this. No screw-ups. I've got it, Lily said, nodding too eagerly. I'll just stand here, like a statue. Claire rolled her eyes and marched off, leaving Lily to fidget with the register. She wasn't sure what a launch entailed, fancy people clapping at clothes, but she could feel the tension. Nicholas had been in and out all morning, his suit sharper than ever, his voice clipped as he reviewed details with Ethan, his assistant. He hadn't spoken to her since yesterday, when she'd accidentally locked herself in the stockroom for 20 minutes, but she caught him watching her sometimes, his blue eyes unreadable. By noon, the guests arrived. Women in towering heels and men with slicked back hair filled the chairs, their chatter a low hum under the jazz playing through hidden speakers. Lily stayed at her post, ringing up a few early sales, her hands shaky but steady enough. She was starting to think she might make it through unscathed when Claire thrust a tray of champagne flutes at her. "Take these," Claire said, her tone sharp. "Pass them out. Carefully." Lily hesitated. "Me? I'm not good with trays." "Just do it. And don't spill." Claire was already gone, adjusting a model's hem. Lily gripped the tray, the glasses clinking faintly as she stepped into the crowd. She weaved between guests, offering drinks with a wobbly smile. Champagne? Bubbly stuff. Most ignored her, but a few took glasses, their manicured hands brushing hers. She was halfway through when Nicholas stepped onto the runway, microphone in hand, and the room hushed. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice smooth and commanding, "welcome to the Smith Fashion Group's spring collection. This season, we're redefining elegance, bold yet timeless for the modern visionary." The crowd murmured approval, and Lily paused to listen, mesmerized. He looked like a king up there, every word precise, every gesture controlled. She didn't notice her tray tilting until a flute slid off the edge and shattered on the floor with a crystalline crash. Heads turned. Lily froze, the tray wobbling as she tried to steady it. "Sorry," she squeaked, dropping to her knees to scoop up the shards. Her uniform skirt rode up, and she yanked it down, her face flaming. Nicholas didn't flinch. "As I was saying," he continued, his tone unshaken, "this collection is about resilience." A few guests chuckled, and Lily prayed the floor would swallow her. She scrambled up, shoving the broken glass onto the tray, and retreated to the counter. Claire shot her a death glare, but said nothing. Yet, the lights dimmed, and the first model stepped out, a willowy blonde in a flowing mink gown. The crowd clapped, cameras flashing. Lily watched, relieved to be out of the spotlight, until Ethan appeared at her side. "Mr. Smith wants you backstage," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Now, backstage." Lily's stomach dropped. "Why?" He didn't say. "Move." She followed Ethan through a side door, clutching the tray like a shield. Backstage was chaos. Models adjusting straps, stylists wielding hairspray, racks of dresses rolling past. Nicholas stood near a table, reviewing a clipboard with a stylist. He glanced up as Lily approached, his expression a mix of exasperation and something softer. "You're a hazard with that tray," he said, taking it from her and setting it aside. "New job. Hand me the cue cards." "Cue cards?" Lily blinked. "Like for your speech?" "Yes. They're numbered. Just pass them when I signal." He handed her a stack of cards, his fingers brushing hers. "Don't drop them." She nodded, clutching the cards to her chest. This she could do. Simple. Safe. The show resumed, and Nicholas returned to the runway, introducing each look with polished ease. Lily stood just off stage, peering through the curtain, ready for his signal, a subtle nod. The first few cues went fine. She handed him card one, then two, her hands trembling but steady. The crowd loved it, clapping as models twirled in petal-soft silks. Then came the finale. Nicholas nodded for card 5, and Lily stepped forward, too fast. Her sneaker caught on a cable, snaking across the floor, and she stumbled, the cards fly from her hands like confetti. She lunged to grab them, but her elbow hit a prop table, knocking over a vase of roses. Water splashed across the stage, and the cards scattered into the puddle. Lily hit the ground with a thud, her uniform soaked, rose petals sticking to her hair. The audience gasped, then fell silent. She looked up, horrified, to see Nicholas staring down at her, the microphone still in his hand. For a moment, time stopped. Then, to her shock, he laughed, a low, genuine sound that echoed through the speakers. "Well," he said, stepping over the mess, "that's one way to make an entrance." The crowd erupted, some clapping, others laughing. Lily scrambled up, dripping wet, her face burning. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, but Nicholas waved her off. Stay there, he said, turning back to the audience. As you can see, this collection thrives on the unexpected. Let's give a hand to my assistant, Lily, for demonstrating that perfectly. Applause thundered, and Lily wanted to die. She slunk backstage as the models took their final walk, her sneakers squelching. Claire was waiting, her arms crossed. You're a disaster, she hissed. Do you know how much this cost us? It was an accident, Lily protested, peeling a petal off her cheek. I didn't mean to. Enough. Nicholas' voice cut through, calm but firm. He'd finished the show and stood behind Claire, his suit still impeccable despite the chaos. No harm done. They loved it. Loved it. Claire sputtered. She turned it into a circus. A memorable one, he corrected, his eyes on Lily. Sales are already up. Chaos sells. Claire stormed off, muttering, and Lily stared at Nicholas, bewildered. You're not mad. He smirked just barely. I should be, but you've got a knack for turning messes into moments. He picked up a soggy cue card and handed it to her. Dry off. We're not done yet. She took it, her fingers brushing his again, and felt a jolt she couldn't explain. What's next? Press meet and greet. You're with me. Me? Her voice cracked. I'll ruin that too. Maybe, he said, his tone dry, but I'm starting to think that's the point. He walked away, leaving her dripping and dazed. She glanced at the pink dress in the window, still pristine amid the madness she'd unleashed. Chaos sells? She didn't get it. Not yet. But as she wrung out her sleeve and followed him, she couldn't shake the feeling that Nicholas saw something in her she didn't see in herself. And that scared her more than any runway fall ever could. Lily's sneakers left faint wet streaks on the boutique's marble floor as she trailed Nicholas to the back office after the spring collection launch. Her uniform clung to her skin, still damp from the rosewater fiasco, and a stray petal stuck stubbornly to her elbow. The press meet and greet loomed ahead, and her stomach churned at the thought of facing cameras after turning the runway into a slapstick comedy. But Nicholas didn't seem fazed. His suit was pristine, his stride steady, like her chaos was just another Tuesday. The office was a stark contrast to the boutique's elegance. A sleek desk, a wall of sketches, and a single leather chair that probably cost more than a car. Nicholas shut the door behind them, the click loud in the silence, and turned to face her. His blue eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, she forgot how to breathe. You're trending, he said, pulling his phone from his pocket and tapping the screen. He held it up, showing a headline from some glossy fashion blog, Smith Fashion's Runway Rebel. Who is she? Below it, a blurry photo of Lily sprawled on the stage, cue cards scattered like fallen leaves. She groaned, burying her face in her hands. Great. I'm famous for falling on my ass. Not just that, he said, scrolling. They're calling it refreshing. Unscripted. Half the comments want to know if you're my secret weapon. The other half think you're my girlfriend. Lily's head snapped up. Girlfriend? Me? That's insane. Welcome to the internet. He set the phone down, leaning against the desk with his arms crossed. Problem is, the board's already on my case. They don't like surprises, especially not ones that spill water on their precious image. I didn't mean to, she started, but he held up a hand. I know, but perception matters. And right now, you're a PR puzzle I need to solve. She frowned, peeling the petal off her elbow and flicking it away. So what? You're firing me? No. He straightened, his tone shifting to something decisive. We're dating. Lily blinked, then blinked again. Excuse me? Fake dating, he clarified, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. We played up for a month. Hand-holding, smiles, the works. It spins the narrative. You're not a loose cannon. You're my quirky +1. The press eats it up, the board calms down, and we quietly break up when the buzz dies. Her jaw dropped. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? Me? The girl who just turned your runway into a swamp. Exactly. His lips twitched, almost a smile. You're unpredictable. It'll sell. She stared at him, her mind racing. This was crazy, movie-level crazy. She didn't even know how to fake a date, let alone with a billionaire who looked like he'd stepped out of a cologne ad. But the way he said it, so calm and certain, made her hesitate. And then there was that tiny, reckless part of her, the part that danced in front of the pink dress, that whispered, "Why not?" "What's in it for me?" she asked, crossing her arms to match his stance. He raised an eyebrow. "A paycheck, a roof over your head. I'll set you up in the staff dorm." And he paused, glancing at the wall of sketches. "You could try on that pink dress." Once. Her breath caught. "The one in the window, only if you say yes." She bit her lip, torn between panic and the absurd thrill of it all. "Fine. Deal. But I'm not good at pretending. I'll probably mess this up too." "I'm counting on it," he said dryly, pushing off the desk. "Get changed. Press is waiting." 20 minutes later, Lily stood beside Nicholas in the boutique's lounge, her damp uniform swapped for a borrowed lilac dress from the new collection. It was softer than anything she'd ever worn, the hem brushing her knees, but she felt like an imposter. Her sneakers peeked out beneath it, a stubborn reminder of who she really was. Nicholas adjusted his tie, then offered his arm. "Ready?" "Nope," she muttered, but she took it anyway, her fingers brushing his sleeve. His warmth startled her, steady against her nerves. They stepped into the lounge, a swarm of reporters waiting with cameras and notepads. The chatter died as Nicholas raised a hand, his voice cutting through like a blade. "Thanks for sticking around. I'd like to introduce Lily Collins, my assistant, my inspiration, and yes, my girlfriend." A dozen flashes went off, and Lily flinched, gripping his arm tighter. She forced a smile, her teeth clenched. "Hi," she squeaked, then added, sorry about the runway. What shoes, you know?" The room laughed, and Nicholas squeezed her hand. A silent good job. Questions flew like arrows. "How'd you meet? Was the fall planned? Are you designing together?" Lily stumbled through answers. Outside the store, no. Total accident, I can barely draw a stick figure," while Nicholas steered the conversation with effortless charm. By the end, her head spun, but the reporters seemed delighted. As they filed out, Ethan handed Nicholas a tablet. "Social media is exploding, sir. Hashtag Smith's Chaos Couple is trending." "Chaos Couple." Lily groaned. "That's us." "Better than Runway Rebel," Nicholas said, his tone teasing. He glanced at her, his eyes softening. "You did fine." "Barely," she muttered, tugging at the dress. "I felt like a clown." "You looked like you," he said, and something in his voice made her pause. Before she could respond, Claire burst in, her face a storm cloud. "Sir, this is a mistake," she said, glaring at Lily. "She's a liability, not a love story. The staff's already gossiping." "Enough," Nicholas snapped, his calm cracking. "It's done. Handle it." Claire stiffened but nodded, stalking off. Lily watched her go, unease curling in her gut. "She hates me. She'll get over it," Nicholas said, turning to her. "You hungry?" "Always," she admitted, and he smirked. "Come on. First rule of fake dating. I buy you lunch." They ended up at a diner a block away. Hardly the billionaire haunt she'd expected. Nicholas ordered burgers and fries, and Lily devoured hers, ketchup smudging her chin. He watched, amused, as she rambled between bites about the press. "They asked if I'm a model, me, and the dress. It's so soft I could sleep in it." "You're chatty when you're not terrified," he said, dipping a fry in her ketchup. She grinned. "You're less scary when you're not yelling at spotlights." He chuckled, a real laugh, low and rare, and she felt that jolt again, sharper this time. She pushed it down, focusing on her fries. This was fake, just a game. But the next day, the game got real. Photos of them at the diner hit the tabloids. Smith's mystery girl, from runway to romance. The staff whispered louder, Claire's glares turned lethal, and Nicholas started leaving her notes. "Smile for the cameras, Chaos Girl," slipped under her dorm door. By week's end, they were posing outside the boutique, his arm around her waist, her laughing as he dodged a pigeon. The press adored it, but Lily couldn't shake the feeling that the lines were blurring. His hand lingered too long, his smiles felt too warm. And when he caught her staring at the pink dress one night, he didn't tease her, just watched quiet, like he was seeing her for the first time. "You really love that thing, don't you?" he said softly. "It's my dream," she admitted, then blushed. "Stupid, right?" "No," he said, his voice low. "Not stupid." She looked away, her heart thudding. This was fake. She had to remember that. But as he walked her back to the dorm, his shoulder brushing hers, she wondered how long she could pretend the chaos wasn't spilling into something real. And somewhere, in a penthouse across town, a certain ex was scrolling through those photos, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the screen, plotting her next move. Lily had been dating Nicholas for 2 weeks, and the chaos had only grown. The tabloids were obsessed. Every blurry photo of them holding hands or laughing over coffee fueled the hashtag Smith's Chaos Couple Frenzy. She'd moved into the staff dorm, a tiny room with a real bed and a window overlooking the boutique, and for the first time in years, she didn't wake up shivering. But the pink dress in the window still taunted her, a shimmering reminder of her deal with Nicholas, and the fact that this was all a lie. She was starting to hate that word, fake. It didn't feel fake when Nicholas slipped his arm around her waist for the cameras, his touch warm and steady. It didn't feel fake when he left her goofy notes. Don't trip over the press today, Chaos Girl. Or when he smirked at her clumsy attempts to fold scarves. But it was fake, and she repeated it to herself like a mantra every night, staring at the ceiling of her dorm. That mantra shattered the morning Ashley Montgomery walked into the boutique. Lily was behind the counter, wrestling with a jammed register drawer, when the glass doors slid open with a dramatic whoosh. She looked up, and her breath caught. The woman striding in was a vision, tall and blonde, her hair cascading in perfect waves, her red dress hugging every curve like it had been painted on. She carried a designer bag that screamed money, and her heels clicked with the precision of a metronome. Lily didn't need an introduction. She knew this was her. Nicholas X, the one the staff whispered about, the one who'd left him for some French chef and now, apparently, wanted back in. Ashley's green eyes landed on Lily, sharp and assessing, like a cat sizing up a mouse. You must be the famous Lily, she said, her voice smooth but laced with venom. She stopped at the counter, resting one manicure hand on it. The girl who falls on runways and steals boyfriends. Lily's face heated, but she squared her shoulders, refusing to shrink. And you must be Ashley, the ex who couldn't stick around. She flashed a grin, all teeth. Nice dress. Did your chef pick it out? Ashley's smile tightened, her nails tapping the counter. Cute. But let's not pretend you're anything more than a publicity stunt. Nicholas always did love a good gimmick. Before Lily could fire back, Nicholas emerged from the back office, his suit crisp as ever. His eyes flicked between them, and for a split second, she saw something, panic, cross his face. Ashley, he said, his tone flat. What are you doing here? Visiting an old friend, she purred, stepping closer to him. She brushed a non-existent speck off his sleeve, her touch lingering. I heard you've been busy with your little project. Her gaze slid to Lily, dripping with disdain. Lily clenched her fists, her nails digging in her palms. She wanted to hurl the register at Ashley's perfect head, but Nicholas stepped between them, his voice cold. If you've got something to say, say it. Otherwise, leave. Ashley laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on Lily's nerves. Oh, I'm not here to fight. I just wanted to see the girl who's keeping my spot warm. She turned to Lily, smirking. Enjoy it while it lasts, sweetheart. He'll tire of the circus act soon enough. That did it. Lily stepped around the counter, her sneakers squeaking. Circus act? At least I don't need a yacht and a sob story to get attention. Nicholas smiles more with me in a week than he did with you in years. Ashley's eyes narrowed, but Nicholas grabbed Lily's arm, pulling her back. Enough, he said, his grip firm but not harsh. Ashley out. Now. She huffed, tossing her hair. Fine, but this isn't over. She strutted out, leaving a cloud of floral perfume and tension in her wake. Lily yanked her arm free, glaring at Nicholas. You didn't have to stop me. I could have taken her. With what? He asked, his tone dry. The register? Maybe, she muttered, crossing her arms. She's awful. Why'd you ever date her? He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a rare crack in his composure. She wasn't always like that. Or maybe I didn't notice. He glanced at her, his eyes softening. You okay? Yeah, she lied, her chest tight. Just peachy. But she wasn't. Ashley's words gnawed at her. Publicity stunt, circus act, and the rest of the day drag in a blur of folding and faking smiles for customers. By closing, she was exhausted, her bravado gone. She lingered by the counter, staring at the pink dress in the window, its tulle mocking her with its untouchable glow. Nicholas found her there, his coat slung over his arm. "You're quiet," he said, leaning against the counter. "That's new." She shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "Just thinking. About her. About this." She gestured vaguely between them. "Is she right? Am I just a gimmick?" He frowned, setting his coat down. "No, you're—" He stopped, searching for words. "You're you. That's why this works." "Works for who?" she snapped, her voice sharper than she meant. "The press? The board? You." "For me," he said quietly, and the honesty in it caught her off guard. He stepped closer, his voice low. "I didn't expect this, Lily. Any of it." She looked up, her throat tight. "Then why keep it up? Why not just end the stupid fake thing?" "Because I don't want to," he admitted, and the air shifted, heavy with something unspoken. Before she could process it, he reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered, warm against her cheek, and her heart stuttered. She should have pulled away, kept the line clear, but she didn't. She leaned into it just for a second, and his eyes darkened, like he felt it too. The moment broke when Claire banged through the staff door, her clipboard clattering. "Sir, the inventory," she froze, spotting them, and Lily jerked back, her face flaming. Later, Nicholas said, his voice steady but clipped. He grabbed his coat and walked out, leaving Lily reeling. That night, she paced her dorm, replaying it all. Ashley's venom, Nicholas' touch, the way he'd looked at her. She grabbed her phone, scrolling through the latest tabloid posts. Ashley had uploaded a throwback photo of her and Nicholas on a beach, captioned "Some loves never fade." Lily's blood boiled. She snapped a selfie in her dorm, holding a burger, and posted it with "Real love is greasy and doesn't need a filter." The internet went wild, but it didn't ease the ache in her chest. She flopped onto her bed, staring at the ceiling. This wasn't fake anymore, not for her. And that terrified her more than Ashley ever could. The next morning, Nicholas called her to the office. He looked tired, his tie loosened, a rare crack in his armor. "Ashley's stirring trouble," he said, tossing a tablet onto the desk. Another headline: "Ex-fiancé fights for Fashion King's heart." "Let her," Lily said, crossing her arms. "I'm not scared of her." "You should be," he warned. "She's relentless." "Then why'd you pick me?" she shot back. "If I'm such a mess, why not go back to her?" He stood, closing the distance between them. "Because you're not her. You're real. Messy, ridiculous, real." His voice dropped, almost a whisper. "And I can't get you out of my head." Her breath hitched, and for a moment they just stood there, inches apart. Then he stepped back, clearing his throat. "We've got a gala tomorrow. You're coming. As my date." "Fake date?" she asked, her voice shaky. He didn't answer, just looked at her, his eyes saying more than words ever could. As he left, Lily sank into the chair, her heart pounding. Ashley was a storm brewing, but Nicholas was the real danger. And she was falling into it, fast and hard, with no idea how to stop. Lily stood in front of the dorm's cracked mirror, tugging at the navy gown Megan, her new friend from the stockroom, had shoved into her hands. It was the night of the Smith Fashion Group gala, and she felt like a fraud. The dress was stunning, sleeveless, flowing, with a subtle shimmer, but her sneakers peeked out beneath the hem, and her hair was a wild bun she'd wrestled into submission with a borrowed clip. She'd scrubbed her face clean, but her hands still shook as she gripped a clutch Megan had insisted she carry. "You're Nicholas Smith's date," Megan had said, grinning as she zipped Lily up. "Fake or not, you've got to shine. Shine, right?" Lily stared at her reflection, the memory of Nicholas' words, "I can't get you out of my head," looping in her mind. She'd barely slept, torn between Ashley's venom and the way Nicholas' touch lingered on her cheek. This wasn't fake anymore, not for her. But tonight, she'd have to face him, the press, and whatever Ashley had up her sleeve, all while pretending her heart wasn't a runaway train. The car Nicholas sent pulled up at 7 sharp, and she slid into the back seat beside him. He looked impeccable, black tux, crisp shirt, his dark hair swept back, but his eyes softened when they landed on her. "You clean up nice," he said, a teasing edge to his voice. "You too," she shot back, smoothing her dress. "No coffee stains yet." "Night's young," he replied, and she laughed, the tension easing just a fraction. The gala was at a rooftop venue downtown, all glass and twinkling lights, the city sprawling below like a sea of stars. Guests milled around, designers, investors, celebrities, sipping champagne and dripping in couture. Lily clutched Nicholas' arm as they stepped out, the cameras flashing like a thunderstorm. He leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "Smile, chaos girl. They love you." She did, though it felt more like a grimace, and they posed, his hand on her waist, her laughing as a breeze nearly took her clip. The press ate it up, but her stomach twisted. Ashley was here. She could feel it. They mingled, Nicholas introducing her as Lily, my inspiration, his tone smooth but his grip on her hand tight. She nodded along, sipping water. She'd learned her lesson with trays, and try not to trip over anyone's train. Then she saw her. Ashley stood across the room, a vision in silver, her blonde hair piled high. She was chatting with a cluster of suits, her laugh sharp and practiced, but her eyes locked onto Lily like a missile. Nicholas tensed beside her, his jaw clenching. "Ignore her," he muttered. "Too late," Lily whispered as Ashley glided over, her heels clicking a war drum. "Nicholas," Ashley purred, ignoring Lily at first. "You look divine. And, oh, it's the stunt girl." Her gaze slid to Lily, cold and cutting. "Still playing dress-up?" Lily bristled, stepping forward. "Still chasing what you threw away?" Ashley's smile faltered, but she recovered fast. "Enjoy your little game. It won't last." She brushed past, her shoulder bumping Lily's hard enough to slosh her water. Nicholas grabbed Lily's arm before she could lunge. "She's not worth it," he said, his voice low. "Let it go. She's a snake." Lily hissed, but she stayed put, her pulse racing. The night rolled on, speeches a silent auction, music swelling as couples hit the dance floor. Nicholas pulled Lily into a slow dance, his hand firm on her back. "You're doing great," he said, spinning her gently. "I haven't fallen yet," she joked, but her eyes kept darting to Ashley, now whispering to a reporter. "She's plotting," Lily murmured. "Let her," he said, his breath brushing her cheek. "She can't touch us." Us. The word hit her hard, and she stumbled, her sneaker catching his shoe. He caught her, their faces inches apart, and for a moment the room faded. His eyes searched hers, intense, unguarded, and her heart slammed against her ribs. Then the music stopped, and a microphone crackled. Ashley's voice rang out, syrupy and sharp. "Ladies and gentlemen, a quick word." She'd taken the stage, her silver dress glinting. "I just wanted to share a memory, Nicholas and I, years ago, building this empire together. Some bonds never break." The crowd murmured, heads turning. Lily's stomach dropped. "She's hijacking your gala," she whispered. Nicholas' jaw tightened, but before he could move, Lily broke free and marched to the stage. She grabbed a spare mic from a stunned tech, her sneakers squeaking as she faced Ashley. "Hi, everyone," she said, her voice shaking but loud. "I'm Lily. You know, the one who falls a lot?" Ashley's right. Some bonds are strong. But Nicholas has smiled more with me in a month than he ever did with her. That's not a bond. That's a chain she couldn't break. The room gasped, then clapped, a wave of cheers rising. Ashley's face twisted, and she stormed off, her heels a furious staccato. Nicholas climbed the stage, pulling Lily into a hug that lifted her off her feet. "You're insane," he whispered, laughing into her hair. "And you love it," she shot back, her voice muffled against his chest. He set her down, but didn't let go, his hands framing her face. The crowd hushed, sensing something shift. "Lily Collins," he said, loud enough for the mic to catch. "You've turned my world upside down since the day you danced in front of that window." Her breath caught as he dropped to one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. The ring inside sparkled, simple, perfect, pink like the dress she dreamed of. "Marry me," he said, his voice steady but raw. "Not for the press, not for the board, for me. Make every day this beautifully chaotic." Tears stung her eyes, and she laughed, a shaky, joyful sound. Only if I can wear that pink dress. Deal, he said, grinning as he slid the ring onto her finger. The room erupted, napkins flying like petals as guests cheered. Lily yanked him up, kissing him hard, her sneakers scuffing his shoes. He kissed her back, deep and real, and she didn't care who saw. Hours later, they danced barefoot on the rooftop, her gown stained with juice she'd spilled mid-toast, his tie undone. Ashley was gone, vanished after her defeat, and the press had their story. Chaos couple ties the knot. Lily leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. "This is nuts," she murmured. "Me, you a ring?" "Nuts is our specialty," he said, his arm tightening around her. "You ready for it?" She grinned, looking up at him. Born ready, fashion king. Months later, the wedding was everything they were: messy, wild, perfect. Lily walked down the aisle in the pink dress, its tulle catching on a chair, Nicholas forgetting his vows mid-sentence, the cake toppling before the first slice. Guests laughed. Her dad, found after years apart, sobbed into a napkin, and Lily tripped into Nicholas' arms, sealing it with a kiss that tasted of frosting and chaos. Under twinkling lights, they danced again, her veil tangled, his shirt untucked. "Perfect wedding," he whispered, spinning her. "Perfect mess," she corrected, laughing. "Especially with the cake on your shoe." "Wouldn't have it any other way," he said, pulling her close. And as the music played, Lily knew he meant it. She was his hurricane, he was her anchor, and together they turned every disaster into a love story, pink dress and all.